You have a copy of the minutes? Any additions or corrections? If not, I'll entertain a motion to be approved. Rick, Kelly, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. You've got 2 pages of transfers, and as I was talking to one of the magistrates earlier, these are line item things that by the end of the year, they've all got to be in the plus side. So we switched some money from one to the other. Some of them are as little as $1, but that's has to be done. If you have any questions on any of these, if not, I'll entertain a motion to transfers be.
Motion.
Charlie? Second. Alan. All in favor? Okay, that is unanimous.
Excuse me.
And you have a copy of the bills and, where's my hand checks? I don't have them on my list. And the hand checks, any question on those? If not, entertain a motion, they be approved. Alan, Rick, all in favor? Okay, that is unanimous. Also, we need to note in the minutes, sheriff fees in the amount of $53,195.28. Also need to put in the minutes the clerk fees, $249,510.08. Going to skip around a little bit on the agenda down to, I can't find it, number 7, the YMCA request bond issue. These folks are from out of town, so we'll let them come first.
Judge, thank you. John Egan, Washington Frost Ground Boardwood. I've got Dave Martirano, who is the CEO of the YMCA in Central Kentucky. Chip Sutherland, who's with Hilliard Lyons, which is acting as financial advisor. Just as you go up here at the podium, happy to do that. So this is an introductory meeting for us. The reason we're here is that the YMCA is involved in an expansion, a couple of projects in the Lexington area. One is the north facility, which is off of Newtown Pike, probably the closest in proximity to Scott County. Then there's also a new facility which is to be built down at Hamburg Place. And the total projects, the total needs for the bonds that we're going to do are about $16 million for the new money, and then $3 million of some bonds that have to be refunded. And you're saying to yourself, why are you here in Scott County? The reason we're here is because to do bonds for a 501c3, you've got to have a political subdivision to act as the issuer. The bonds are never going to be an obligation of the county or the Commonwealth or anybody. They would be payable purely from the YMCA revenues. In Lexington Fayette Urban County Government charges a substantial fee to do bonds of this sort, and in our case it would be about $50,000. And because the YMCA would rather use those kind of monies for its programs and to help its various participants, we're looking for someone other than the Lexington Fayette Urban County Government to actually issue the bonds. We would have to have a hearing in Lexington. We've got to go before them. If we use Scott County or if we use somebody else, we'd still have to go before them and get an approval, but we just wouldn't have to pay the extra $50,000 if somebody other than Lexington Fayette issues the bonds. If we get this consensus that you're favorably inclined to let us do this, we would come back with a resolution and have a formal hearing on the resolution. But this tonight is just an introduction to tell you what we're looking for, to also introduce Mr. Martirano, who can tell you a little bit about what the YMCA is doing, and then to answer any questions that you might have for us. So maybe I just first let David say a little bit about
Sure.
what you guys have been doing.
Well, first off, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about the why. Certainly our presence here at the Chamber here in Scott County is very important, not only for the YMCA, but certainly the residents of Scott County. So we're very appreciative of the opportunity to be here. You know, our ability to impact more families, children and families in serving all of our counties that we serve, this bond issue would allow us to do that, specifically in building our new YMCA in Hamburg, but also a Y that a lot of our Scott County residents go to, the North Lexington Y. A lot of folks do make that drive to Loudon at our North Lexington Y for services. So we just wanted to say thank you in advance for your consideration and support of our YMCA, not only in Scott County, but all of Central Kentucky.
And again, we've got Chip Sutherland with Hilliard. I don't think, I mean, if you had any questions about finances, but we've got a financial advisor, Hilliard Lyons, and we've got a buyer for the bonds. It would be Whitaker Bank. We went out and solicited interest from various banks in the central Kentucky area. Whitaker Bank offered an awfully low and attractive interest rate, so they would be the ones that would buy the bonds. So I'm
Glenn,
happy to answer that.
yeah, well, I've talked to Glenn about it. I don't know if you got any questions or comments that the court would need to be aware of.
Well, very briefly, Mr. Egan was kind enough to call me a couple of weeks ago, I guess, wasn't it, Mr. Egan? And introduced the idea of the Scott Fiscal Court being the sponsor of these bonds. We both kind of simultaneously, Mr. Egan knows far more about these things than I'll ever know, but simultaneously came to the conclusion we've got to have some type of nexus, for lack of a better term, between Scott County, YMCA being located in Fayette County, but nonetheless possibly utilized by Scott County residents. And in the letter that he was kind enough to forward a copy to me, you correct me if I'm wrong, that there are approximately 24 Scott County residents that are employed by the YMCA of Central Kentucky and in excess of 600 Scott County residents that participate in YMCA programs. I don't know whether that's all in the Lexington facilities or not.
No, that 600 is actually just here in Scott County. There actually is another 500 that then participate down in Lexington.
Okay. But with that knowledge, then it's also my understanding, and Mr. Egan, you need to come in and jump in here anytime, that the court or the county can sponsor bonds like this if that nexus can be established. But there's a limit as to how many dollars you can do in 1 year's time. Now, am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that's a little bit technical area, but what we would be issuing approximately $19 million of tax exempt bonds. These would not be, there's something called bank qualified bonds. These are tax exempt. These are tax exempt but not bank qualified. So if we were doing bank qualified, we would be asking you to issue 10 million or less, but we need 19 million. So these would not be bank qualified. Okay. There would be no impact on, certainly not going to be on the credit or the ratings of Scott County. They're not part of your indebtedness for purposes of your rating. So that's, and Chip could amplify that. That's, you would not be able to, in 2015, issue additional bonds and get that bank qual. You could issue tax exempt bonds. If Scott County is planning to issue bonds this year, you could issue them, but they couldn't be bank qualified because you would be issuing more than 10 million total of tax exempt bonds in 2015. So, you know, if you had present plans to borrow tax exempt and you want to be bank qualified, then we'd say, look, we don't want to mess that up, and so, you know, we'd say it doesn't make sense for you to issue bonds. But if you're not planning to issue tax exempt bonds for the county, or if you haven't made commitments to some other 501c3 to help it in a similar way, then you could issue the bonds and it won't affect you in terms of being able to do bank qualified the next year. If you want to do them, if you've got a project for a firehouse or whatever, you can certainly do it bank qualified in 2016, but it would limit you on your ability to do bank qualified in 2015. Chip, do you want to amplify that or add to
You're doing
that?
a fine job. It's just, I just probably make it more complicated than it needs to be, but our key question to you all is always, do you have plans to issue debt this year? Then we want to know about it, just like John said. So we would then go elsewhere to see if we could use them as a conduit for issuing the bond. So our understanding is that there's not a need to issue debt this year for Scott County and therefore there's no need for the bank eligibility. And so by the YMCA issuing the bonds and using the bank eligibility, then it won't, no way impacts you, so.
What does bank eligibility mean?
Sure,
That's-
so, yeah, in very layman's terms, it's really, the federal government came up with this idea that they wanted to make sure that rural or smaller issuers had favorable access to the markets, and so they came up with a number, and it's 10 million. And I don't think it's changed since '86, but that's the number, and so it'd say that, Livingston County wanted to borrow money, and, they were gonna issue taxes and bonds, and you're thinking to yourself, you're an investor. So you say, I can buy Livingston County bonds, or I can buy Lexington bonds. And if you're not really well informed about the Commonwealth, you say, well, I know Lexington, I don't know Livingston, I'll buy Lexington. And so the government said, well, we wanna make it where smaller issuers have a little leg up. And they said, if you issue less than 10 million a year, you can deem your bonds bank eligible. And that means that banks that buy these bonds are able to deduct the carrying cost of purchasing it. So that means they can give a lower rate. And so Livingston gets a leg up compared to Lexington. So that's what the bank eligibility means. So for Whitaker Bank in this case, they won't be allowed to deduct from their taxes the cost, their cost of funds is deposits and CDs. That's their cost of funds. They won't be able to deduct that cost when they use it to buy these bonds. If they were, and we were doing an issue as 10 million or less, then they could lower the rate a little bit because their cost of funds is lower.
It's a really technical area. I would say, you could summarize it by saying that there's a differential when it's to help the small issuers and to help the banks buy those bonds at the lowest rate. And it makes a difference of, what, 5 to 15 basis points?
It can vary. I mean, the markets change and move, but it's anywhere from, I'd say, 10 to 40 basis points.
As much, okay.
So that's why it's a key question for you all. If you were going to say, well, we plan to issue 6 million in bonds this year, and we want to be able to borrow money.
We don't plan to issue any bonds, so, and you said 19 million is what you're gonna borrow?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We would be asked to
Yeah.
do a $19 million bond issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. If there's no negative impact on the sponsoring government entity, no downside, why does Fayette Lexington charge $50,000?
They've got it's in their regulations. I don't know if it's just a way of raising revenues, but it's just a standard procedure that they charge 1/4% of the amount of the bonds. And so in the case of a $20 million bond issue, that would be $50,000. So it's ours would be slightly less, but it'd be almost $50,000. It's just part of the procedures that it offers. It's not because there's a risk with the bonds. It's just, I think it's an they have a lot more procedures over there than probably we do here in Scott County, and that's maybe part of it too, the price cost thing.
Any more questions?
I don't think this carries with it any administrative responsibilities for the court, does it?
No, once the bonds are issued, really the county's out of it, and it's purely a relationship between the obligor, which would be the YMCA, and the bondholder, which would be the Whitaker Bank.
I've asked a question, you explained it real well, I didn't understand it, but you explained it well. But how would the bonds be issued, in Scott County's name or the YMCA's name?
It would say, County of Scott, conduct revenue bonds, and then you'd have the name, the YMCA of Central Kentucky Project. So your name would be in the bonds, but it'd also say YMCA of Central Kentucky Project. And in bold letters we'll put it in the first page, certainly in the text of the bond, we could put it in the first page. There's a statement that KRS 103 requires you to have this statement, that the bonds are not an obligation of the issuer or of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, but are purely an obligation of the obligor payable for the revenues due. That'll be in bold letters on the bond.
And if I understood you right, Whitaker Bank's gonna buy all the bonds,
That's
so
correct.
they won't be on the market.
No, they will not be in the market. They'll be
Okay.
bought and held by Whitaker Bank. That's correct.
Yeah.
So there's no liability county
That's correct. There,
going forward.
yeah, it's,
What about the financial gain or liability for the county? There's no, is there any, there's no, we were just,
I'm not sure.
yeah, you mean-
We don't charge.
there'll be no charge.
We don't charge.
Nice guys.
There's no liability, why charge? I mean, it's,
Most of the governmental entities that issue on behalf of 501c3s or off boards like WY don't charge. It's just Lexington has that peculiarity, and they have to give you context. Transylvania University, you're talking about Nexus. Transylvania University is in Lexington, and their Nexus is Lexington, and they don't really have a choice, so they go through there. But when you have issuers that have a reach like YMCA, they tend to try to go out to the surrounding communities where they have a legitimate nexus to do it.
We know that some of the churches that do some school type, community facilities. I think Jessamine County did one for a church based in Fayette County for the very reason that we're here is to.
I think
I think
Jared
Stamping
here,
Ground.
Stamping Ground did one
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, we did it twice. We did one for Central Christian Church in Lexington and also Harmony Christian Church in Scott.
But-
There's no harm to the municipality.
So, let me get this straight. So, after, at what point, if someone else or another group wants to come in and reissue, has a request to reissue bonds, it's 1 year from when the date of issuance, or?
No, it's just the calendar year.
Okay.
So come January 1 of 2016, you'd be free to issue bonds for some other 501c3.
Even though there's still a $18.5 million balance on this set of bonds, there's still no limitation after the calendar year.
That's correct.
And John, if another 501c3 were to come to you, they could issue bonds this year, they just have to not bank qualified.
That's true, yeah.
And then next year with the new, it's calendar year, January 1, 31 for 16, there would be a whole new bank eligibility, $10 million consideration.
Any other questions? I support this. For one, I don't know,
Do
David.
we need a motion?
Well, yeah, I guess it would be.
Make
Okay.
a motion to approve.
David. Any further questions or comments?
I think
Rick,
your
you have anything
your
to add?
approval could be conditioned upon.
Yeah, we got to bring the resolution down.
Yes, yes, you can make
Yeah.
And your public hearing being held.
a public
Yeah.
hearing being held and a further resolution being presented.
All in favor of that?
Wait a minute before.
Okay.
Lynn has researched, their attorney, our attorney, there is no obligation. This has been researched. This is all new to me.
Well,
I just want to make sure that we're not.
if you're asking me if I understand all the ramifications, I'd have to tell you no. We've done one of these, Alvin, it's been several years ago, where, I can't remember who came before the court, but it was one of the bank qualified bonds, and we were the sponsor for that. No obligation to the counties, worked fine for what I understand. But I just recall that $10 million cap, Mr. Egan and I talked about that over the phone. So, no obligation to this community, but it would put you into next calendar year before you could do something if an entity came before the court to ask for that kind of sponsorship.
And I'm assuming that resolution will spell out that there's no obligation to the county.
Make that conditioned in the approval by the court. Yes, sir.
Any further comment?
Will this be the only action that the court will take on this, or will you'll bring back?
We would come back, we have a meeting, I think, on May the 28th, I believe, is that?
We do.
We'd like to come back to that meeting. If you give us preliminary approval tonight, we would like to come back with a full-blown resolution at that meeting, and we would have the language that you spoke about clearly in the resolution.
So the one positive that'll come out of this is by going through Scott County instead of Fayette County, you'll have $50,000 more to do your good works with than you would if you did it over there.
That's absolutely correct.
Basically, all this motion does then is invite you back, and then we'll vote again.
That's correct, Glenn.
Yes, sir.
No.
And I think too, it'd be helpful if the resolution is available, maybe a few days ahead of time,
Yes, please.
we can distribute that to the court members, and they'll be more familiar with what you're asking for prior to the 28th. That's
We'll
available.
make sure that that would happen.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimous so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll send you a resolution, we'll be back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll get back on the regular agenda. Joe, are you gonna be the spokesperson?
Thank you, Judge, members of the court. I'm here tonight, and I'm also joined by Christy Robinson, who I think you all know, Jason Hale from CDP Engineering, and Keith Lovin from Lexington Fayette Urban County Government Engineering Division, and Megan Chan from my office, and we're all going to be here to answer questions at the end. I was just going to summarize why we're here and what we're asking for, and then we'll be available for questions. Okay. I'm here tonight to ask the court to endorse this Legacy Trail Extension project and to act as an applicant on a trail grant application on what's called a CMAQ grant. CMAQ stands for Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality. It's a federal grant available through the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. It's available to 13 counties, mostly metropolitan counties, and it's available to those counties for projects that address air quality issues, improve air quality in the county. Fayette and Scott County are both eligible counties, so they're both among the 13 counties. The CMAQ grant, like most federal grants, requires a 20% match. So there's a 20% local match. I really wasn't aware that Scott County was eligible for CMAQ grants until recently. The Horse Park and Fayette County have been kind of working more closely to try and find funding opportunities for the Legacy Trail extension through the Horse Park. I think Christy especially has talked with the Horse Park quite a bit to try and get them on board with the Legacy Trail extension. I think they always wanted to see it happen, but they had some concerns about the trail going through the park and affecting events within the park. So in the last year, the Horse Park has kind of come to some consensus on where they like the trail. Jason Hale with CDP Engineering, he completed the original feasibility study for the Scott County portion. He also completed kind of a feasibility study for the Horse Park itself for the board that identified a trail route along the outside of the Horse Park, along basically going from the entrance to the campground along Ironworks Pike and turning north and going along the western side of the park along I-75. And that corridor that was identified is in this map, and I put it in your packet, and we have a blown up version here. But essentially that takes the trail through the Horse Park owned land, but avoids kind of going through areas where they have events. And it allows them to just move the fence, kind of adjust the fence line, and run the trail inside the existing fence. But then, you know, if they added 2 more fences, they could just easily accommodate the trail along its edge. So I think the Horse Park is on board. The director of the Horse Park, as well as the board itself and their leadership, is all on board with this, with the Legacy Trail going through the park itself. What this CMAQ grant does, it allows sponsoring local government to apply for the funds to design and construct the trail. The Horse Park itself doesn't want to get into the trail construction business. They want to see the trail happen, but they like to see the adjoining local governments to apply for the grants and construct the trail itself. And they've offered the land as a donation for the 20% match. So they're giving the easement or right of way for public access along their boundary essentially for the match. Fayette County has committed themselves to applying for this grant application. The horse park has committed to the match. Because it wouldn't make sense for adjoining counties to construct infrastructure in the adjoining counties, it's going to have to be kind of a cooperative deal where we apply for the land portion in Scott County. Fayette County applies, puts the grant together for Fayette County portion. The horse park is a partner by donating the land match, and then we take our two grant applications, put them together, and send them to the state for consideration as one overall project, but really two applications. So that's why Fayette County, even though the majority of land is in Fayette County, I think 70% of the horse parks in Fayette County, 30% in Scott County, they can't take over as the sole manager of the project. We're going to have to work in conjunction with them, not only in the grant application, but in the management also of the design and construction phase. So Fayette County's made the commitment, Horse Park's made the commitment. Now we're asking for Scott County Fiscal Court to, endorse the project and be the grant applicant for the CMAQ grant. We're getting a lot of information from Fayette County and from their grant application. When we've run the numbers, we came up just $5,000 short of the match. So we are also asking for a commitment of $5,000 towards the match, but that's the only ask tonight. And that may the estimate of the land value based on the right-of-way was off a 2010 appraisal from the existing segment of the Legacy Trail. So in coming up with this estimate, we tried to be conservative by using 2010 kind of appraised values. So I think 2015 appraisal will probably be higher, but there's no guarantee. So we do have to, as part of the application, kind of commit to making the match. Last time we came to fiscal court was for the TAP grant application, which was a trail grant, also transportation grant, to fund a section of the Legacy Trail that was identified in the feasibility study from the Scott County soccer complex to through the portion of the Amerson property. That grant is still out there. It hasn't been, we haven't heard back on it yet, so it hasn't been, we haven't heard yay or nay on that yet. When we did come and talk about that grant, there were two concerns really that we heard. One was, is the horse park on board? And I think we know now that the horse park is on board. They really want to see this happen, and they're willing to commit over almost $1 million, a little less than $1 million, but they are willing to commit all that land match towards the grant application. So they're strongly on board. The other question was the ability to use the tunnel safely. In talking with the federal, state, and local transportation officials and trail designers, they are unanimous in their belief that the trail can be used safely. Their design opportunities or design, their lighting, other design elements that can make it safe. I think if this, if we're allowed to go forth and go and apply for this project and it is funded, I think the next step really is to get with the transportation cabinet, and they've also already said that they want to work with us on this and identify either through them or through a consultant, kind of flesh out some of the design ideas on how to make that tunnel safer. There is a tunnel, same length, same dimensions, that's serves existing farms on the Fayette County portion of the Legacy Trail that's operating now, and they've had no accidents or problems with that. And I think Keith can talk a little bit about, if you have further question about kind of the design elements they use there. But there is a tunnel that's being used now. I think the tunnel in Scott County can be used. The exact design features need to be worked out. I think also Lyle Road is something that, it's proximity to Lyle Road and how that crossing happens is just as big a safety issue that needs to be addressed. But that can be addressed. I don't see that the momentum should be stopped with the horse park on board. This leg of the Legacy Trail is really key to being able to get to Scott County, and then I think it'll really build the momentum to make that final kind of push to get into Georgetown. But as I said, Christy is here, Keith Lovin from Fayette County to answer questions, and also Jason, who worked on the feasibility studies and has been working with the horse park. So essentially what we're asking for is kind of a commitment from fiscal court to this project, and we're asking if you all can be the applicant in this grant application along with Fayette County and the horse park.
I think might ask somebody to address the tunnel. I think that's the only problem that some have a question with.
Keith, do you mind talking about the tunnel a little bit?
Hi, I'm Keith Lovin. I'm an engineer for the City of Lexington, and I was the project manager for the Legacy Trail that we built in Fayette County. The tunnel that you all are talking about is got the same dimensions as the tunnel that we are currently using on the Legacy Trail. The tunnel is located underneath I-75, and it connects UK's farming operation. They have everything from, they run poultry, horses, grain. It's a farming operation. They have tractor trailer trucks that go underneath there. They have wagons. They have combines. They have pretty much any kind of equipment that you would have on a farm, and they use it daily. And we have not had any crash incident related to the tunnel. We've had where the approach to the tunnel is located on a 5% grade. We've had issues with people not making that turn, but as far as the tunnel itself, we have not had any issue.
How sharp is the turn going into the tunnel? How sharp is the turn going into the tunnel?
We've got, it's a T intersection, and so it's a 90-degree turn.
And how close is the road from the tunnel entrance? I mean, I'm the one that's expressed concern about the
Okay.
safety issue at the
Sure.
tunnel that you're wanting to use there. And you still not convinced me, because I've driven trucks through there, and you're on a bright sunny day, visibility is terrible going into that tunnel, and you've got a very short approach, a tight turn, very sharp turn, and I'm still convinced it's a bad idea to put bicycles in there with those trucks. And what's sitting back there is not just a farm operation, it's a commercial granary. I mean, there are lots and lots of loads of grain going in and out of that tunnel.
Sure.
And it is a real serious concern to me.
Well, and actually, the Legacy Trail, the tunnel in Fayette County is actually longer than the one.
But they don't have a commercial granary on one side of it that's.
I consider it a commercial operation. I mean,
I don't
you
think
got
it's
there.
the same amount of truck traffic, I don't think.
And I was trying to get the amount of traffic, and they don't have a clue. They just said it's a lot. That's not a number.
What type of mechanisms would you suggest in the event that we want to control the bicycle and truck traffic through the bridge? I don't know if you have one currently, if there's red light and green light on one side, or if there's gates.
Sure.
What would you propose if that's a safety issue for the court?
Right now, the only measures that we've taken is signage, and we looked at trying to do a signal and trying to control the traffic that way. We felt like that it wasn't needed. We have started evaluating the use of those concave mirrors that allow people to look, but we just can't justify the cost, because right now there's not a need, And, you know, we constantly are monitoring it just to see if there's anything that we can do that's needed. And we're not getting any complaints from the public. We're not getting any complaints from UK. It's been in existence for 5 years. You know, I don't really, other than the signage, public awareness, I don't see any need for anything else.
Any other questions? I guess we're in, is there a motion to go ahead with this? You make a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Judge.
Any further discussion? Call the roll. Steve. Start with me.
George.
Yes.
Rick.
No.
Alvin.
No.
Chad.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes, but I want to emphasize to the people who come here tonight to present that the concerns, I think, are valid, that you need to definitely, I still have wonders about, maybe not the tunnel part is a big question, but how people are going to cross safely across Lyle Road. You know, there's a lot of, it seems like it's a connector road, or people try to make it a shortcut, Georgetown to 25. So I vote yes, but I do emphasize that please do take cautions and whatever it takes to make that safe, please do. Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
David.
Yes.
Okay, so you can proceed. Thank you. Next item, well, he's just going to leave. Next item on the agenda is about the PDR program, and each of you got a letter from John Lacey concerning the PDR program, and not here for a vote tonight. Just explain what that is. This is a purchase of development rights, as I think everybody knows, and to preserve, the purpose is to preserve farmland. And what I have found out, they have a parcel of land, 161 acres, that qualifies if the money's there. And it's a 50-50 match with the state.
No, federal.
How much?
Federal. It's 50-50 with federal.
It goes
It's
through
not-
the state, doesn't it?
No.
Well, it doesn't?
It's federal. It's
Straight
US
to the
It's a
federal?
USDA program.
Okay, I'm sorry. Appreciate that. And I want you to think about it. We'll vote on it at the next regular meeting. And if there's any information that you want or need about there's a lot of misinformation out about the PDR program. And we can get John Lacey to come and present that. But it's been I think a good program to preserve some farmland. And
I've got a question, Judge.
Yeah.
If we're going to vote on the budget ordinance tonight, how does that 400,000 fit into the budget ordinance? Because
That's a
if
good
we're not going to
question.
vote on it until next week or next meeting, then that would be the same time as the second reading, which means $400,000. If we decided to add it into the budget, that would be a material change, I would think, which would make us have to have a first reading again.
Well, that's a great question. Yeah. One of the two things we could do, we could take it out of this year's budget. Or if we take it out of next year's budget, there's two things we could do. One, we've got $1.5 million in reserve for transfer.
But is that line item in the budget for PDR?
Well, it goes under economic development, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a line in there, same line we've used before.
Okay.
So we would not have to amend the budget.
Okay.
But we have to make choices, you know. But we could, this year, if we chose to do that, put it in this year's budget, either way. But I'm not trying to push it off on anybody. I support it, but I don't know. It's very controversial. I don't have to tell anybody that. And, but if we're gonna preserve farmland for the future, we either got to buy the development rights or hope that the farmers decide to keep on farming for several generations. But any questions on that?
Yeah, my question is that with that amount of money, in my mind, what I want to do is make sure that we have a priority list of some capital projects that money could possibly use for it. It might be more urgent than what, who knows what's going to come 6 months down the road, a year from now, in the upcoming budget year, that we might have needed to use that money for something else.
Well, all of that's good questions. I mean, no question. It's what do you want to spend your taxpayer money for? And whether you want to spend it on a one-time purchase, do you want to spend it on ongoing? These are what the court has to decide. We know from budget requests what we've been requested. So, you know what's been requested. You got to know where you want to spend the money. And that's, do you have a question?
I do. Well, it's not a question, it's more of a statement. I do have a concern of spending $400,000, and I have a concern that we have to buy the rights when planning and zoning could actually develop zoning laws or ordinances that would take care of this problem for us, or this potential problem for us, I would think.
I think you're wrong about that.
I mean, that's
Joe
what
could tell
I'm
you.
wondering. Is there a situation where you could say out in the county to develop, you have to develop this size lot, as opposed to developing I'm trying not to use neighborhoods, developing a single home on a quarter of an acre and having 200 of them? But a county can also stop development, because Jessamine County did it.
They did do a very good job in stopping
Well,
between Lexington and Jessamine.
No, because they backed off of it, and now they've got what they've got to live with.
Yeah.
So,
But
and
let
we-
Joe answer that
Well,
question.
I would say you could restrict development in other ways. Yeah, you could raise the minimum lot size so high that, it basically stops all residential development.
That could be challenged.
So,
But it's got to come to this body to be passed in.
Yeah.
That would be a recommendation.
Your recommendation, but
P and Z, but then it would have to be passed by a zoning ordinance.
I mean, Lexington has a 40-acre minimum lot size, and they have an active PDR program. So, I mean, you have a lot of situations where, especially in Scott County, there's a lot of already approved subdivisions that already have,
But that's not
preliminary
my
plats.
fault.
Well, I'm just saying,
mean,
it's
that's-
hard to
that's
it's
another
hard to
board that's
stop
done
that. It's hard to stop that. Already.
But if they're already approved, so are you saying that there's the potential that we're buying property that's already approved for development, and we're buying those rights away from that approval? Are
It's
you saying that's a
possible.
possibility?
It's
I'm
a
not
possibility. I
asking.
think you could qualify for the PDR program if you had a subdivision already approved on your farm. I think that would be a good reason to purchase it. Keep that from developing.
But why would we not legislate
I could-
the zoning to
David,
prevent?
David, I can tell you one reason, because if you do that, you're taking away part of the value of those people's property. If that's their property, you're gonna take part of it away by doing that. That's one argument against it.
if you had a 50-acre farm, Dave, and
But
the government
if-
said you can build one house on it, you'd probably be upset. If that was your livelihood.
You're
That's exactly what
You're
you're
taking
doing.
away their development right without paying them for it. This PDR program actually pays them for that development right. So,
No, I understand what it is, because we did this when I first came on, and I voted for it my first year, not knowing everything that I know now. But it just, knowing the other needs that we do have, and the fact that we're going to have less money, a lot less money over the next 3 to 4 years, It's a huge concern. And plus, I don't like the selection process. I don't like not knowing where we're buying because of the fact that, in my mind, it should be contiguous land that you're buying, so you're buying a beltway. It should back up to something that means something, not a farm here, a farm there, a farm here, a farm there, because at that point, you've got spots in the city that are not within the city. The sheriff's department has to respond to specific places in the city because they've never been annexed. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Makes no sense to me at all. But they do get city water, they get city sewer, but they're not annexed into the city. So I have a problem with spending and buying spots of property all over the county that have no, they may not be contiguous. And what are you gaining if you're not buying blocks of land that grow so that you can preserve that area as kind of a reserve area as opposed to all over the county? And there's no way to fix that. There's no way to fix it, and that's why I can't do it.
It's in the ranking. You know, they're trying to achieve that same, you know, those same goals, but you can't force people to participate. So,
But if it doesn't meet our need and it's not contiguous with what we've done previously to reach an end goal, I mean, you'll never reach your end goal if you shoot here, shoot there. You gotta keep focused, and if it's not in your end goal and it doesn't get you down the path that you want to go down, then why would you do it?
well, I think you got to start somewhere.
We've
I mean,
started somewhere, though. We've already started the process previously. And if you buy here and you buy here and you buy there, you may never connect the dots. And you might
But
get
you
all
may.
the development right in the middle of where you just bought all around. And what purpose have you served? And I'm not asking you to answer that question. It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to answer. I'm just kind of getting my feelings out of how I feel about the whole thing at this point in time.
Dave, one thing, and it doesn't answer it, one small part of that question, but one of the big issues when we start development out in the county is the roads.
Oh, I know.
So if you buy, say you did 60 acres or 100 acres on the worst road in Scott County, that means that there wouldn't be development there. You think roads like, none's more dangerous than Lloyd Pike. So if you develop green space out there that can't be developed, that may save 40, 50 houses from being built there. That's one of the advantages from being out.
But we don't know where it's going to be. That's the
Well,
problem I have.
I think the problem,
It's
I
like
don't
a
want to
surprise
know,
gift.
because we've got a board that does that. And one of the things when we did that, I said, number one, from my position, I don't want to know where it is or who it is, because I don't want to say, well, you're playing politics with it. Then I got accused of playing politics with it anyway, when I didn't even know who was on it. But there's two boards, Alvin, that evaluated, aren't they? The local board and then the state.
USDA would have to approve it.
Prove
for their
it.
part.
And, but
But it's a blind scoring system, and, I mean, you can't go out and tell somebody, I'm gonna buy your development rights if they don't want to. The scoring system was developed way before any applications were taken. There's a very lengthy list of items in there. It includes the quality of the land, and one of the big point getters is contiguous or adjoining preserved properties. But, you know, that's additional points. It's not the only thing in there. Whichever one comes up to the top points, that goes to the top of the list. That's the way it works.
Joe, I'd be curious if, with the economy slowing down so much in the last 4 or 5 years, are there really a lot of farms still selling to developers, or is that a number that we could, I know you don't have it tonight, but
I don't think there are, honestly. We haven't seen a lot of new subdivision activity.
and if they
It's
are,
old
they're typically
subdivisions that
closer
are-
to town or on the bypass or.
Mhm.
How many
So-
undeveloped lots do we have right now? Do you know off the top of your head? I mean, I know you all have got that number, but.
Yeah, platted lots or
That are ready.
preliminary ready. I think it's 1,700.
And how many are going through the approval process?
It's 1,700 in the city. I think it's 400 in the county, so it's 2,100
2,100
roughly.
lots.
We have about 4,000, I think, that were preliminarily approved. So they're larger They may be a 400 lot subdivision that had preliminary approval, then they're building it in phases. So maybe 4,000 that are lots that have already been approved, essentially.
It's a lot of lots.
Mostly in the city. It's mostly in the city.
Right.
Rick, you
On the surface, I'm opposed to this as well. That's one of the reasons why I volunteered to join the board, because I want to be informed. And at this point, I'm still opposed, but I am open-minded and willing to look at it. But you brought up the politics of it. During the campaign, especially in the primary last year, that was a hot topic on doorsteps when I was knocking. And I can recall only one or two people that were in favor of the PDR program. Their angst was based politically. They made accusations. I said, I'm not part of that. So, but that bad taste is out there, but other people discussed it civilly, and they were opposed to it, and they had the reasons. So I want to educate myself before I want to do it before this next presentation. So maybe I can get with Mr. Lacy, maybe.
well, we could have him come to court, that'd probably.
Well, I'd kind of like to look at,
Yeah.
because it's obvious that Alvin knows a lot about it, and that means something, the scoring system and so forth. I want to know all of that so that I can make a good judgment. So that's why I volunteered. And so, because it was, in my district, especially during the primary, it was a hot topic. I did have those discussions, and I really can't remember one person that was in favor of that. And so, anyhow, but I still want to be educated.
Could we have him come at the work session, the next workshop?
Yeah, if he can come, I'll call
Okay.
him, yeah. That would even be better for the work session.
Judge, is part of the process that we're not allowed to know? I'm not is talking about the scoring part of it, but why we're not allowed to know where the property is?
Well, I think it's so that it wouldn't be, Alvin can tell you, well, you're doing it for this one, and because of who they are instead of, that's the reason.
There was a lot of time, the scoring system was developed way before any applications were taken, because nobody wanted to be in a position to be accused of, picking certain people. I mean, it's a blind scoring system on purpose. It's designed that way.
Yeah, but I mean, the chairman's saying that we have 160 acres. And if it's one farm, should we not know if we were going to allot money to
Well,
what they've scored is a high priority? Should we not know what it is or where it is?
That's going to put you in a position of approving an individual. And if you do that, I'm not saying that you don't want to. Just, I'd like to make a couple of comments. The 400,000 is going to be tough for me to approve right now because of our budget worries about the reduction. But in general, I think it is a good program. And the concern about, right now, there's not a lot of development pressure, but if we'd had this program in place, 04, 5, and 6, we would have seen some very real beneficial results. There would have been a lot of properties protected before there was so much development on it. So we don't want to wait till development is booming to do it, because it's too late to shut the barn door then. But right now, I'm going to be reluctant to put 400,000 in as worried as we've been about this budget. But in general,
Let me ask you, Alvin, and Charlie brought this up, to keep the program alive, just could, you're on the board recently, put in a lesser amount just to make sure that we don't forget it. And I want to comment on what you said, Rick, about people being against it. One of the things that the Vision 2020, Planning and Zoning, and all of these agencies, and everybody in Scott County that I talked to said, we've got to save green space. How do you save it? You can't take it away from people. And you look out to the west, where Ward Hall is, most beautiful entrance in Scott County at one time, or where White Oak is, where I live. Big, nice green space, bur oak trees and so forth. Going to Lexington, If you don't live there and you don't own it, it's pretty easy to say, don't do it. But those are the things that people want for Scott County, I think. And how do you get them? You get them by cluster development. You get them by 5-acre lots. You get them by PDR. That's why I think it's important. If the people of Scott County think the beautiful entrances to Scott County are important, this is one tool to do it. Now, is it worth $400,000 in a tight budget? It may not be, but I think the PDR program is something that helps save green space. Now, if it's not important to keep these places between here and Lexington, Newtown Pike, these places, if that's not important, then we shouldn't even, I could get 100 people to say that's wasted money. But but you could also get the same 100 people to say, we don't want us to be between here and Lexington like it is between Nicholasville and Lexington. So you can get arguments on either side of it, and that's the issue.
I think, Judge, yeah, that you framed the issue pretty good right there, because they've tried other places around the nation to ask, to get people to preserve green space or whatever, and like David said, yeah, we could probably get the planning and zoning to put a short-term moratorium on, but that doesn't help for the long-term benefit. And I was in the General Assembly when Fayette County put theirs in place back in the early 2000s, and worked with Frank Penn and Martha Graves and others over there to put that program in place. And they started with $10 million in seed money, and I think they've set aside thousands of acres over there. And yeah, I don't know that we'll have, if we have that 400,000 to put us into it, and can see fit to do it, I'm for that amount. If we can't see that amount, then I think we need to continue to have some money put into that. And if we can't be full partners, we need to continue to show effort from the fiscal court that we're intent on preserving our agricultural identity. And I don't see any better way to do it. When people, I know there's a lot of people out there say, well, they got so-and-so $100,000 for their set their farm aside. Well, they sold off a very valuable commodity in their development rights too. And that's not something that every farm or landowner is willing to do. And in one of the highest growth areas not only in Kentucky but in the nation, that's a valuable commodity that has to be. You can't expect people, they're not going to not develop it when the pressures get there unless you give them an incentive. And this is the incentive that works, the only one that works.
Well, what I'll do, thank you. I'll ask John if he can come to the workshop and explain about it, and we'll take a vote and we'll go from there.
Judge, would you ask him if he has some kind of flyer or something that gives a
I'm sure
brief
they have that,
explanation so
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
okay.
I think we have it on our website if you want
Is
to
it?
go to our
Okay.
website. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. I'll go there.
Okay, thank you. We need to appoint one more board member to the PDR board.
Two.
And
One or two?
I think it's one, and they gave us two names.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And I talked to Rick about this today. These organizations are part, I think Joe, or Alvin would know this, certain groups were designated to appoint a member.
Right.
And this was the Scott County Beef Cattle Association. Current member is Charles Graves, who has requested he be replaced on the board. So they sent two names. I know one of them. I don't know Jordan Hutchison, but I do know Clint Bevins, and either one, I'm confident, the Beef Association felt confident in them, or they wouldn't send them. Now, what we've done in the past, but I don't know that they know this, we usually take the first one listed as their recommendation, but, and we have this with other organizations, like the library board or the health board or something. They have to give you 2 names, but they have, so I don't know on this, but either one, as far as I'm concerned, but we got to appoint one.
I know Jordan had worked with him. He would be good.
Is that your motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thanks. Is there a second?
Jordan Hutchinson, yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right, Kelly, all in favor? Okay, thanks. We've got the same situation on the library board, and this has been the policy in the past. They have a library board that they send 2 names to the state. The state sends the state librarian sends a recommendation to me. They have Jennifer Baldwin and Ken Wright. I know both of them. Jennifer Baldwin is the one that they listed first, and I think that would be their intent. So I believe that. Rick?
I know both of them as well, and in my view, either one would be great. Apparently, she's the preference of the board, so I'll make that motion.
Okay. Any questions? All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. All right, Dave. Dave has sent us all a letter that we reluctantly received.
We don't hear it next.
You wanna hear
You want to tell us what?
For a variety of reasons, primarily been some personal issues with family members. I respectfully would like to submit my retirement to the county effective June 1st, 2015. I'll be here 23 years, May the 12th. As George says, this is the greatest place in the world to live. I didn't grow up here, but I feel like I'm part of this community. I appreciate the opportunity that's been afforded to me by both sides of the street. It's more than I could ever ask for in a career. We've got some good things going. I think there's some positive things, forward direction with the department. Feel like I'm leaving it in good shape and moving forward, and with the support of the court and city council to move this forward as an organization. I've got some transition plans kind of loosely put together, but you know, as my buddy at the hospital, the CEO, said, you hire the right people, you give them the tools, and you get out of the way and let them do their job. So I feel like that's where we're at. So reluctantly submit that, but moving forward into the next chapter of my life, and I thank everybody for the opportunities in Scott County.
I want to thank David for his service and all he's done for the county, and I regretfully move to accept his resignation.
Retirement.
Retirement. I'm sorry. I'm
We don't
sorry. Yeah, it's close.
All right, is there a second? Second, yeah. And before we vote, David, I think without question, and I've talked to the hospital people, not just the current ones, but the past, and many of them have been in different places. And to the man or the woman, they say we've got one of the best ambulance services in the state of Kentucky. And so that's because of the leadership and what we do. And so we appreciate what you have done. And if the court votes to accept your retirement, well, we'll do so. All in favor? Okay, and thank you. And what we do, and this is a policy that on all replacements or retirement, we post internally, and we'll do that Monday. We'll post internally for a couple of weeks, and then if we have applicants, they'll be interviewed, and then I will make a recommendation to the court. If we don't have applicants or we don't have somebody that we feel comfortable with, it'll be put out, you know, in the paper and go from there. But that'll be done. Thank you, David, for your service. ordinance 1501, budget ordinance. I might add, the budget is no different than what we've talked about the last time, so.
There was one correct, that 75,000 for.
Yeah,
12,
that's,
you got
yeah,
that
that,
straight,
that
correct.
correction, but,
Yeah.
Lynn?
Question.
Yeah,
Can I address something in the budget before we do the ordinance reading?
I guess it'd be all right.
Does everybody know who I am, by the way? Craig Wink, if you don't. Noticed something at the last meeting I wasn't able to attend on April 10th that was brought up. And the question was, what was the reason for the EMT certification being brought up for the incentive?
For what?
The EMT incentive for
Oh.
the one that the fire department already has, the rest of the organization.
Well,
to be
we,
allowed. Why was that one picked?
I think EMT training for any departments, not just for any, one single department, that it would benefit the county to have EMTs.
Does the fiscal court realize how much a EMT class is? Does the rest of the magistrates know? $1,000, $1,200, is it pretty close? In that range for one person, that's booked 6 months of training.
So,
Does everybody I'm bringing up information just so that you guys are aware. I don't know if everybody.
We didn't
knew.
offer to pay for it.
we didn't offer to pay for it.
Well, that was going to be my other question. Is that going to be the responsibility of the employee to pay to do that class, to get that incentive?
Well, if they have it already, the fire department, I believe, requires them to have EMT training,
As does EMS, yeah.
as does EMS, so.
So basically EMS is getting, congratulations, by the way, they totally deserve it. That's nothing against EMS at all. We all understand that they need some assistance, but I couldn't find another agency that had any EMTs minus one. That was the sheriff's department, who was a transfer from EMS to the sheriff's department.
He would be eligible,
He would be eligible. Anybody else?
not that I know of, but it's there if they want it.
So basically, that was a blanket increase to EMS.
If you want to put it that way. They would get it, yes, everyone that's an EMT, right.
Well, the fire department was held back from being allowed any extra incentives, which we noticed was through discussion. But I had an idea, because I have a good friend who's on the fiscal court who has always told me, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And I had an idea. I watched the court meeting. Being as I listened to it, and the statement that you made was about a shooting for, and someone had asked, why didn't somebody give that individual CPR? Because I didn't have the training for it when I trained for that. Well, CPR training and EMT training are completely different.
But if you've got EMT training, you'd have CPR training, would you not?
Right, but if you get your CPR training, you don't have to be an EMT. You don't have to go through
I
6 months of
understand. I
training.
understand. We don't give anything for CPR training.
Well, you do. You give CPR first aid training to the jailers. That's
Okay.
15 cents an hour, and
Here,
the AED.
Craig, what we've done, the fire department and sheriff's department, in addition to getting these extra amounts of money, also get incentive pay.
Okay, from
And
the
so-
state, not from the county, though.
Well, it's still money. You get to spend it.
Okay.
The jail did not get the incentive pays, and that we put some things in, if they got training, that they could at least come closer to making a livable wage, the same way with the other. So we added some things to the jail so that they could compensate their rate if they got the training. If they didn't get the training, then they couldn't.
Right.
So that's why it was put in.
Well, the question I have is, and it's a suggestion, that if the fire department's incentive, and there's only one that they get from the county, if that was accessible to all county agencies, then would it not make sense and be fair and equal, as we've used up here, to give every agency's incentive that they have the ability to be reached out by the other agencies? Like the CPR first aid that the jail has. I talked to Charlie about this the other day. The first aid CPR training is a fairly easy thing to do within a short amount of time and could be used by everybody in the county, all agencies. Imagine being down in the clerk's office, someone standing in line, they have a heart attack or they have a code, they have the ability to grab the AED and do that. They wouldn't have to go through 6 months of training to achieve that, and it would be more beneficial for the county. It wouldn't cost near as much money. You wouldn't have to send somebody. I wouldn't have to pay $1,200 to go through a class if I didn't have it, if I worked for the sheriff's department, wait 6 months, and then get 40 cents an hour, versus if, say, Chad went down and said, I got my first aid CPR and AED training, and that's the same 30 cents as the jail has, that more usable, the road department could use it. I mean, every single one, animal control, anywhere you're at, you have that ability to help out.
Stacy could even use it, couldn't she?
Yeah, exactly right. You never know.
I mean, we can add a lot of things, Craig, to keep raising salaries. We did this for the jail in order to compensate them a little bit if they got the training. We could get taser training, give that to everybody. I think the jail gets that.
I think if it was the training, the incentives that they have, if they're usable in your arena, your certain agency.
Okay.
I wouldn't do any good to have taser training for me. I don't use one.
Okay.
But to have, the road department has a CDL training. I think there's some guys that have that. There's a couple of guys on the fire department that have paramedics, but they don't get anything extra for that. And that's a high level of
Who's
training.
not gonna get it?
Do what?
Who'd you say, the paramedics?
The
wasn't gonna get it?
paramedics that work for the fire department don't get a paramedic incentive,
No, they get the EMT training.
just as was given
All
to.
right, go ahead.
Well, what I'm saying is, I'm hoping that everybody realizes that the fire department was held here, and everybody else was given an opportunity to increase something. We weren't allowed to have anything that in the fire department. There was no option given. But EMS, it was like, we're going to be fair and equal. Is what you said. For everybody, we're going to give 1,040. Oh, by the way, a big change. Anybody who has an EMT is going to get an extra 40 cents an hour. Well, the fire department already has that, so they can't get it. But everybody else, if they want to go do it, go ahead. So again, they sit here, and everybody else gets an opportunity. And my suggestion is, if they have the ability, everybody has the ability to get those same training, just like EMS was afforded because the fire department had it, then that would be more fair and equal across the board. And I'm wondering if that is something that you guys would look at. The statement you made was, if you do let me see here. If you have, see, if they get the extra training for it, they get the extra money, they get paid for it. That's the only one that we get, that the fire department gets from the county. And it was just, as I saw it and a lot of others saw it, was, okay, we're gonna put the fire department back and give everybody else an opportunity to increase their wages and help out. But there's only one person besides EMS that has that. And I'm asking if that's the case, that maybe the fiscal court could look at a lot of the technical aspects. Do you guys have anything for SWAT? Is that not a pretty technical thing that I would think, and I'm not even working for the sheriff's department? Do you get anything for taser training or weapons training? I think you guys do it like once a year or something, right? Okay. That's a pretty big deal. And if the jail's got something like that, then maybe that would be something that could be looked at to help them as well. But there's a lot of technical aspects that different agencies have to do to raise themselves up. I'll give you an example, and I talked to Charlie about this the other day. I was offered a class for child safety seat installation, baby seats, basically. I don't get anything extra for that. Why would I do that? I was asked by members galore. Why would you do that? Because I'm hoping that one day I can show, number one, that the fiscal court will recognize that, some technical training that's not required for me to do. These guys don't have to do it. That's something I do out of my own. But that's just one. And it helps the community in a huge way. My friends, my family, they all ask me, hey, can you help me out with the car seat? Got asked last weekend. I was like, absolutely, it's not a problem. I don't get any extra for it, but there's a lot of technical aspects that they achieve in hopes that one day they'll say, hey, you've got 6 certifications. Somebody needs to recognize you for that, in hopes that, one day that'll happen. So that's my suggestion. Would anybody got any feedback on that?
Thank you.
I was asking if anybody had any
Yeah.
feedback. Does anybody got something for me?
Are there any, or how do the other counties or other, how are they rewarded different than what we do here in Scott County and other, in other counties? Do they give incentives?
I couldn't even tell you, I wouldn't know. Do you have any idea, Chief? Anybody else got any ideas on that one?
Charlie, the judge and I have talked a little bit about, and it has nothing to do with this. Our discussion had nothing to do with this, but I had mentioned to the judge that I would like to see the court sponsor a wage and benefit summary and compare everything that our employees have to similar size counties and municipalities and similar services, not fire-based EMS, not private EMS, not other situations like that, but do a wage and benefit summary and determine where we are versus others. I know that there was a benefit summary done throughout the Southeast, comparing us throughout the Southeast, our health insurance and other benefits that we offer. And we were better than 95% of the Southeast governmental entities. Scott County was. I think that was done like 3 years ago, or 4 years, 3 or 4 years ago. But I'd like to see a total. Then I'd also, and the reason I say that is because it's done in the private sector. And what I'd also like to see is in that whole scenario is the same provider, the third-party vendor, whoever that might be, I don't know who might do it for us, also provide every employee their total cost to the county. Because it's not just about the benefits, it's not individually, it's not about the salary individually, it's not about the retirement individually, it's about what is your total cost to the county. And I've had 2 employers from my past do that because I never really understood what I actually cost my employer. I just looked at what am I making on my paycheck. And then when I understood what I was costing my employer, it brought a whole different light to the ballgame and a different appreciation that I had for what they were actually spending for me to do my job. So the judge and I mentioned to him briefly a couple weeks ago, and it's something that I'd like for the court to consider.
We did that, which I told David, 3 or 4 years ago. And you say, well, I'm making $40,000. Well, my net cost is $70,000. And this is an eye-opener that most employees, not all of them, look at, wow.
So I'd like to get a comparison to other similar entities, and then also so that all the employees know what their total cost to the county is.
Anyone else have any feedback for Mr. Wink?
So everybody has the same understanding that the fair and equal across the board is the same except for the said increase for EMS personnel, and is agreed upon that. And the fire department was set aside, not allowed to get one. Is that true?
So what would be the, I'm sorry.
It's not set aside, you were already getting that. No. The fire department was already getting that one. It's not a set aside, that the fire department was already
Right.
getting that one.
We can take all of it off and not give anybody that. But
Well, that would be
we'll
more
have
of a
to start
retaliation
arguing
type
with
thing then, wouldn't it?
No,
And
that's
say
not
that
even,
would-
that's
why would
crazy.
take that
It's
away?
rhetorical.
Well, I'm
Rhetorical
saying, but
question.
the
Yeah.
thing is that,
You're getting it, and we give it to somebody else, and that's not fair. That's the way
well, that's what
I interpret you to be saying.
saying that we want to be fair and equal for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's what the beginning of the
40
statement was.
cents for everybody
And
is
then-
fair and equal as far as I'm concerned.
And then you had addressed an idea, and I don't disagree with EMS getting an increase because we know we have to keep people here and recruit the best that we have by doing things like that. But when you put that as a blanket for all the agencies except the fire department,
It's
that-
not except fire department because you are already getting it. It's not except.
did the fire department have the ability to increase anything with that
Are you,
idea.
okay, are you required to get it?
Yes.
It's part of your job duty.
When you
Yes.
hired in,
There are
do you have
certain
it?
certifications that I am required to have for my job duty, to have my job. If someone else in my office gets them, they're not required to do it, but they are, if they want to, I don't want to say better themselves, but if they want to improve their training and their marketability, and they want to get that certification, then they can go get that certification, and they do get extra money. Me, I have to have it because that's part of my job. I'm required to have it. So there's a difference here in, it's not just a blanket for the entire county gets a 40-cent raise.
No.
If someone decides to do it and they want to do it, then that's their prerogative. But if you're required to do it, it's built into your job description. Just as some things are built into my job description that I have to have, and that other employees, if they decide to get that certification in our office, their pay gets increased, but they don't have to have that certification. They do it because they're doing the training and improving their marketability is the best
Right.
way I can say it from a private industry.
Well, that's what
aspect.
I'm trying to explain, is that if you're doing extra, the incentive to do that, just like some of the other incentives would be, if you want to be a car seat installation technician or Swift Water for these guys, or hazmat for EMA, or SWAT for, don't you want to have the people who want to do that and say, I have pride in you and we're going to reward you for that?
But there are some things, SWAT. Not everybody can do it.
Right.
There's a selected group, and a lot of times they're either chosen based on their position within law enforcement, or they may volunteer, or they go through some type of selection committee. So that's not a certification that everybody can get. So that's an unfair comparison. Hazmat for EMA. EMA is Emergency Management Association, and the response that they are supposed to make based on what the federal standards are and the state standards are, they should have their hazmat. Because, and here's the thing, it's going to be different here for EMA than it's going to be different in Letcher County or Leslie County. Because in Letcher and Leslie, they have volunteer fire departments. They don't have the trained people like we have here in fire departments. So down there, their EMA people are going to get those trainings because they're going to be probably one of the first ones on the scene. It's good. We're blessed to have a full-time fire department. And it's good that EMA has that hazmat training. And so I think that's an unfair comparison too.
These are just examples, of course.
I know,
there's-
but I mean,
there's
you gotta
plenty of them.
give, you gotta give fair comparisons and fair examples. The other thing is too, you can't incentivize everything.
Not asking to.
And so, but there are some things that you put out there that, you know.
I thought it would be a good idea, since CPR and first aid are a very easy one to get, if the entire, all agency personnel had that option to get an incentive for that, just
You know
because
what?
it'd be.
We're required to do it in my company, and we don't get incentivized for it. We're required. They come in annually to do the training.
Okay.
But it is for the safety of the workplace. Just having CPR and first aid is not the same as having EMT. And
Right.
if somebody decides that they want to invest their money in EMT, I think the raise comes up to $820 a year. Obviously, when you could decide to increase your awareness and increase your marketability and your ability to react to situations and take your level of standards up a notch,
Right.
you're not going to get the immediate return on investment. It's going to take a couple years before that kicks
Easy.
in.
Yeah, totally.
So the EMT and the CPR, I think they're two separate things. I think they're two separate things.
Right.
And, you know, CPR is a good thing, and I don't see where we'd have any problem offering it, but to incentivize it,
Well, not everybody wants to do that either. There's a
Right.
lot of people who want nothing to
Right.
do with being in that, and that's the separation. You know, I've talked to a lot of people like, I want nothing to do with it. I'm very comfortable with mine. I've talked to some and said, if I had the same ability to get that incentive that the jail had, heck yeah, I'd go get CPR or first aid AED, and I'd be a better asset to the county government and to the community as well.
But I think the jail is a completely different atmosphere. I mean.
Well, we all have
than-
different atmospheres.
I know, but I think comparing the jail to the clerk's office and having CPR in the clerk's office, and, I mean, I just think that's completely different than, because you have people that come in that they may not recognize that they are high on something, or they ingested something right before they walked in the door.
Right.
You know, that happening in the clerk's office is going to be a rare occurrence. At the jail, with today's drug culture, wouldn't surprise me if it happens every day.
Probably so. Like, pretty much.
Is the cost of the training for that certification, is that, whether you're a fireman or any other county employee, is that borne by the person that's
That's
seeking
by
to get the?
that's basically by the company who does the EMS training, and they set their own rates, and it's,
Right,
it was
but-
only like 550 when I went through, and now it's probably closer to 10, 11. Yeah.
But the county doesn't pay for anybody to get, I mean, that's your out-of-pocket, so you can be in a position to get.
When I went through back in '97, I had to pay for it, and when I got my certification, I got reimbursed as it applied to the county. How they do it now, I'm not real sure, but that was back old days of dirt.
Will these employees that are, will be incentivized by with this budget increase or whatever, will they be reimbursed for their training, or
No.
that's their out-of-pocket?
That's their out-of-pocket.
That's for them to
Yeah,
be, yeah, they'll
You
be
know,
in a
most people
position.
that go to school and get trained for occupations,
Right.
they
They're-
pay for it. I paid for mine.
Right. So-
It was just a suggestion I thought would be
Yeah,
a
well-
good one to try to,
I just didn't understand
instead of
it. I understand
spending
now.
their own $1,200 to say, if you're gonna do that with first aid CPR, it seemed like it'd be a
Yeah.
better fit for the community, the county, the whole ball of wax.
Thank you. Sure.
It occurs to me, and I don't know how many, since we've got some new people up here, it occurs to me when we started talking about the fire department receiving incentive with us and the sheriff's department receiving incentive, I don't know if everybody on court is familiar with what we're talking about. Does everybody know what we say when we say we get an incentive from the state? Back around '81, the state, to keep training and well-trained firefighters, implemented an incentive program. Today, to not drag this out any longer, it has to be, today, it's $3,100. We receive a monthly check on the last check, and if it's the $3,100 for every firefighter is divided into 12 equal months. That's paid at the last check of every month. Now, with that, we receive from that fund, we receive the incentive, and the court or the county receives money to cover the cost of the incentive on the retirement, if you know what I mean. That's paid for too. So we get the money, and the county receives money to pay for the cost of the incentive on the retirement. Now, having said that again, it was said a minute ago, it doesn't cost the county, well, not to diminish what Jane does, there's some paperwork, obviously, that has to be done. The only time it costs the county, the incentive, that is if there's unscheduled overtime. If there's unscheduled overtime, then you get the hour and a half or the what am I saying, the overtime rate, that does start to accrue money. And we, a while ago, had a problem. We don't have, there's very little overtime anymore, so that again is not an issue. And if anybody wants to look that up, I believe, off the top of my head, it's KRS 95A 230, I believe, is the KRS. I believe it's 230. but it might be. But anyway, 230, 250, 260 all cover the fire department and the sheriff department incentives. Now, in order to receive incentive, or in order to receive the $3,100 a year, firefighters have to have 400 hours of training. They have to achieve initial 400 hours, then they're turned into the state, and then after that, they receive their incentive money. To keep receiving their incentive money, they have to then have 100 hours a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in certain subjects, with everything else you got going on, it can be pretty cramped in there, to keep their incentive. We have to have 100 hours a year plus to keep that. And again, it's a 400-hour deal to start with. I just didn't know if everybody was familiar. I just want to say again, it doesn't cost the county anything. The incentive is just kind of a pass-through, or the county is just kind of a pass-through in that, with the exception of some paperwork. There's some paperwork done, and every time we get somebody on, we have to make sure that they are trained to that 400 hours, and then send paperwork to the state, and Jane's got to do paperwork to incorporate them, and that's how it all comes about. So, I didn't know, just wanted to make sure everybody was aware that that's how the incentive program works for us, and I'm sure it's pretty close to that for the sheriff's department, but I didn't know if, like I say, everybody knew.
Mike, do you know what percentage that hazardous duty retirement went up this year?
No, I don't.
Judge, you know?
Well, it's right 35%.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you have someone in the clerk's office, their retirement is costing the county less than hazardous duty, and I'm not taking anything away from that, but understand that's part of.
But I'm saying
the big picture.
This incentive is covers that part of it. I mean, the incentive, we get the money, and there's money also that comes in to cover the hazardous duty. Unless there's unscheduled overtime, it pays for the insurance or pays for the retirement too. That's not an issue unless there's unscheduled overtime, not with incentives.
It's just an issue on their salary.
Yeah.
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 You get reimbursed for that 3,100, so 35% of that.
I'm not talking about your incentive. I'm talking about your
just
overall
regular,
salary.
total.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
Again, I'm just saying that the incentive we get from the state doesn't cost the county anything as far as retirement, unless again you get into unscheduled overtime.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only way.
There was a lawsuit filed by the fire departments, not Scott County, several years ago, when they went back and we had to pay for all of the scheduled overtime, and we paid our.
Yeah, I mean,
I think we're one of the few counties that paid
the
that.
county stepped up and paid for that. And to be honest with you, it wasn't a county issue or a fire department issue. It was actually it was a state issue. They told everybody how to calculate it, and they did what they told them, and the calculation was wrong. So they came back.
That's wrong, right?
And they also, it also says in there, and I want to point this out, but don't jump on me until I'm finished. It also says that this can't be considered a wage, which Scott County does.
Considered what,
It
Mike?
can be considered a wage, or as part of the hourly wage, which Scott County doesn't do. It's not figured into our wage. I'm not saying that. Or it also says that it can't be used to keep from achieving other raises that you would normally get, which we got the same raise that everybody else is getting. I'm just saying, if you go to the KRS, whenever it is, it's gonna have that in there. Is it 250? Yeah, 250, 260, 230, they're all in there. Do you have a question, Rick?
This incentive is mandatory?
No, it is not. But every professional firefighter in the state of Kentucky, as long as you meet qualifications, which is that you have over $8,000 a year in salary, you have a GED or a high school diploma, and it seems like there's one other thing, get qualified to get the incentive.
I guess my question too is there training?
After the initial 400 hours to start into the program, then you have to keep 100 hours a year in certain subjects, and there's certain subjects you have to have in that 400 hours, but now you have to, and the state piles on different things every year, but there's a few things you have to have that are mandatory for incentive, and then a lot of it's elective, but you have to have 100 hours. And I don't know the difference. I think there's a little bit of difference between us and the sheriff's department as far as how many hours we have to have. They have to have 40, we have to have 100. And I don't know if they have to have a whole lot more to start or what. I'm not trying to ruffle feathers, I'm just trying to, I didn't know if everybody was aware of what the incentive program is and what it was, so.
I certainly didn't understand it like you presented it, so I'm glad you did. I appreciate
And
that. I will make another comment, after hearing all this. I like, what Mr. Livingston was talking about. In the private sector, I'm an electrician, and I have to do, by law, continuing education, or my licenses are revoked. Of course, I pay for that, and I don't get any, of course, I'm in a bit of a unique situation. I also own my company, but have employees, and that's the industry standard. The individual keeps his. Now, with that said, it's like David, I think, mentioned, that makes me more marketable. Obviously, I'm not looking for a job, but still, the other thing though is that looking around that calculation, I think the judge alluded to, that this has been done a few years back, looking at the actual cost of an employee, which we do, and that encompasses everything, which is the insurance and so forth. I mean, it's a legitimate concern, I think, and it's worth looking into, but.
And I agree totally. The only thing we've asked for incentives for over the last several years would be in things that we have to recertify in. All our people have to be, or we want them to be and require them to be hazmat technicians. That's a big load. That's a lot to do. And if we've ever asked for any extra monies, we've asked for it maybe in the field or in the certification range where they get an instructor's certificate, which again is a big deal. You have to have some of these things to get promoted. So and I agree that you can't just go out here and that was a big word. I don't know if I'm gonna say it right. Incentivize. I like that. I don't know if you can go out here and do that.
I don't know if it's a word.
Well, I don't know either, but it sounded good, so I agree. I don't know if you can do that. You can't do that with everything, like you say, but I don't know. I just thought maybe that everybody wasn't sure what the incentive program was about.
Any other comments or questions before we read the budget ordinance? If not, Glenn.
This is ordinance 15-01 budget summary, an ordinance relating to the annual budget and appropriations, be it ordained by the fiscal court of Scott County, Kentucky, section 1. Following budget for the fiscal year 2015-2016 and the amounts stated are appropriated for the purposes indicated. Under general fund, $22,650,604, Road fund, $8,943,320. Jail fund, $2,955,979. LGEA fund, $300,000. McCracken fund, $3,000. Hospital trust fund, $1,000, for a total budget appropriation of $34,853,903. Section 2, this ordinance shall be published in the newspaper by title and summary within 30 days following adoption. Section 3, this ordinance becomes effective upon passage and publication, and there is a notice of availability that everyone needs to understand. All interested persons and organizations in Scott County are hereby notified that a copy of the county's proposed budget in full is available for public inspection at the Office of the County Judge Executive during normal business hours.
The procedure on this, and we vote on first reading, and then if we approve it today, I'll take it to the Department of Local Government tomorrow. They go through it, make sure that it's in order, and then we'll have second reading, I hope, at the next regular meeting, if they get it back to us. And that's where we stand on it. I need a motion to approve first reading, if you so desire. Alvin, Rick, any questions? All in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Also, we have to do what we call an annual standing order, and the annual standing order is bills that we can pay without coming to the court. Like we sign these bills every time that we meet, and that's for utilities and payroll. And mentioning to Rick, if we had a bond issue, that would qualify as a standing order, but we don't have that. So the annual standing order, Glenn, you've got that too.
Yes, sir. Pursuant to KRS 68.275 sub 3, the fiscal court may adopt an order to pre-approve the payment of monthly payroll and utility expenses. No other expenses shall be pre-approved pursuant to this subsection without the written consent of the state and local finance officer. Fiscal Court of Scott County, in accordance with state law, hereby orders recurring expenses for utilities, including telephones and salaries, be paid when due. It is hereby acknowledged the above standing orders shall expire after July 1 of each fiscal year, and no more payments designated in the standing order shall be pre-approved unless a new order is adopted by the Fiscal Court of Scott County according to the provisions of KRS 68.275 sub 3.
Now, that's something we have to do with every budget. So need a motion to approve those standards. Chad, Alvin. All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Have something just added to the budget, to the agenda. You'll like this, Alvin. A couple of weeks ago, JR and I went up to District 7, and the topic of discussion, and it's been here, was Minor Branch Road. And I told them I would recommend to the court that we would take the flex funds, that's hard to say, and put that on that. And we had a meeting yesterday with some people from the state, and they said that they had enough money in their fund to do almost all of Miners Branch, except about 60, how far was it, JR, they didn't?
1.3 miles.
1.3 miles. If we would pay the rest, which would be in the neighborhood of $60,000, then they would do it all. And our flex money, said it good that time, our flex money wouldn't, 100 and some thousand, they wouldn't take that. I mean, we wouldn't have to do that. And I said I would bring it to the court tonight, and they want it done before the end of the fiscal year. So that would be June the 30th. And they've already got a contract with Nally and Gibson to do the section that they were going to do. And we got money in the road fund for roads to do that. So if you think that this is a good thing to do, which I think it's a no-brainer, Alvin, you probably won't make that motion.
Yeah, I will make that motion. I know the people are going to be very, very pleased that this is finally going to get done. We'll get it back.
I'll be glad to see the paver down there. Any questions on that? That's a win-win. But it has been worked hard on by several people behind the scene, and to make sure that we got that road done, and we really appreciate it. So all in favor? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, Rick.
Judge,
Yeah.
I do want to make a point that this was a complete county effort.
Yeah.
County effort.
County effort, yeah.
This was not lobbying through our state officials. This was a complete county effort.
So, thank you. And that's a fact. Well, I better not say anymore. The NAACP is having a banquet. I think it's May the 30th. We will get as many reservations as we need. The date, I don't have the date with me, and it's in the latter part of May. So,
30th on Saturday.
what?
30th on Saturday.
It's on a Saturday, and is it to May the 30th?
Yes, sir.
It is on Saturday, May the 30th. Let Stacy know if you are going and taking a guest, so that we can reserve a table or 2 tables or whatever. But be sure and let her know, and we'll go from there. And
What kind of
those
book is that you have, Glenn?
That's an old bank book.
David, if I lose that, I'm out of business.
David uses one of these things.
Oh, I know. I'm still old school. I'm sorry.
Does anyone else have anything to bring before the court? Any? All right.
Not pertaining to the stuff. I know that we're supposed to bring a letter up. I don't know how to start this conversation. I lost one of my officers to a medical retirement, and some time ago we have done in the past, we promoted a gentleman to ride that position, and we always give them half salary. Now I guess it's a half of promotion. I don't know which half, but anyway, the half it gets paid. And every time that they, nobody else got that one. I forgot to bring the paper, and it's gonna be a couple of weeks. I was just wondering if there's any way we could go on and make this gentleman whole. I'm gonna give him his other 30 cents without me bringing the salary up. I mean, if you don't want to do that, that's fine, but he's been riding this spot for how long? Since August. At half the raise, he get 30 cents. It's a 60-cent raise from firefighter to lieutenant. We always, when we move them up to ride those spots, we don't go on and give them the full promotion, we give them a half raise. If you all want me to bring the paper back, I will. I'll tell you, it's been so long since I promoted anybody, I just forgot to fill it out. I was just wondering if there's any way we could see fit to go on and say that we could give him his 30 cents.
You talking about making it retroactive?
No. I'm just talking about going on now and giving him the full promotion since we know the other gentleman's not coming back.
Okay.
It was a comp case. We were dealing with comp. We didn't know when he was going to, be for sure gone. Now we know he's not coming back. Like I said, this guy's been riding the seat for that long. And I just wondered if there's any way we can go
That
on.
doesn't seem to be a problem.
I move we go ahead and approve the change.
Chad, all in favor?
And I'll still bring you the paper just so you all.
Well, you got to get them to Jane.
Yeah, but I'll make sure all the magistrates still know what the salary is, if that's still the practice, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Anyone else? David, do you want to say anything about the summit or not?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The Economic Development Prosperity Summit that we were awarded is going to be May the 26th at the Conference Center at Georgetown out by the football field. We met this morning and have put an invite list together of state officials and private industries. And the topics that we'll be discussing will be manufacturing, obviously, because that's large for our community, but also tourism and trails, and to talk about how we can expand to those areas to bring in more tourism and increase the growth of dollars into the community from outside dollars. Is that anything else?
Well, you were going to ask if anybody on the court wanted to come.
Oh, yeah.
We're limited to how many we can have, but we want the
Yeah,
court
it's May
members
26th, which
that-
I think is that a
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
And it's going to be from approximately 8 to 4:30.
Yeah, it'll be all day.
And it'll be a working lunch, so, I mean, there'll be no leaving or anything like that. It's gonna be straight on through. So if you all could let us know in the next, maybe by work session next week, if you want to attend. Plus, we'll need to, if we have a quorum, we'd have to get it advertised and all that stuff probably, wouldn't we?
To be safe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
To be safe, I probably,
Yeah.
but
So if you all can let us know before next Friday.
and we've got the limited numbers, or even got to know the exact number. I think 30 is the most that they want us to have. We could be a little over. Any questions on that from David? Kelly?
No, sir.
Charlie?
This past weekend, Sunday afternoon, there was a ceremony or a get-together, reception, I guess it was, out at the Extension office, and it was to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the 4-H Horse and Saddle Blankets Club. It honored Bonnie Newell and one of the charter our founding members, Marion Simon, and just wanted to let the people know that the importance of what 4-H and the Saddle Blankets Club has done over that 40 or 50 year time span. They've impacted a lot of people's lives in an important way, not only teaching them how to ride and interact and care for horses, but a lot of life lessons and stuff that were learned, and I know it made an impression on my family and me, and I know a lot of other Scott Countyans. And there were a lot of faces there from the past, Gerald Rose and Diane Kelly, and many others that kind of were the trailblazers of 4-H in Scott County. And one of the former members, the late J.B. Hawkinsmith, was a
This was on the court when I and the judge came on in 1990. Was a 4-H agent and county agent, and so it's made a big impact on Scott County, and needed to be it's significant that we observe it.
Thank you. Didn't know about that. I wish I'd known.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, this came up all of a sudden,
Yeah.
I think.
Anything else? Thank you. Rick?
Yes, sir.
Lynn?
Nothing wrong.
Judge? Stacy? Stand adjourned.